Yes, now
Okay, we are
it's,
really and truly on now.
yeah, finally we figured out the live stream now.
Yeah,
Sure. So thank you so much, Ram, for agreeing to do this, and welcome to the Kitabe. It's a very new platform, so I'm really honored, and thank you so much for being the first guest over here.
I appreciate it. I'm very humbled to be part of this because, like I said, I'm just a small-time author so far. So it's my
Mhm.
privilege to be here.
Okay. So tell us something about your book, The Peshwa, the series.
Well, the series is essentially, and I want to stress on this, it's
Mhm.
historical fiction on the lives and times of the Peshwa himself, like Bajirao the First.
Right.
And the fact is, I stress on the word fiction because I've taken liberties with timelines,
Mhm.
characters, so on and so forth. But
Mhm.
where I think fiction should draw the line is staying true to the spirit of the character himself or herself. Um, so in that sense, I'd like to say that I'm proud to represent the valor, the military genius,
Mhm.
probably a few imaginings of the family life of the uh, Peshwa through a lens that I was able to see him through,
Uh-huh.
and that is essentially it. So it's a story of the Peshwa seen through both an author's imagination as well as staying true to some
Mhm.
uh, um important events from history as well as the actual personality, the spirit of the character.
Right. So when you say that you have taken liberty in terms of the characters, the dates, and also, what do you mean by they have taken liberties? Like you have uh, put in the dates like according to the modern times, or the like not exactly modern times, but around that area, but a little bit tweak in the dates and all, the characters. And
Well, what I what I would probably start off by saying is uh, what we have access to are you know
Mhm.
a chronicle of events and how they transpired in the past.
Right.
So the
Mhm.
first liberty you have to take is to imagine the personality of each character. Was, for example, was Bajirao say short-tempered? Was he
Mhm.
like fun person to be with? Uh,
Right.
was like it's known that he was well loved by his soldiers and subordinates, but how exactly was the chemistry between them? These are
Mhm.
certain things that you try to draw out through conversations strewn through the book. But besides that, the other liberty I would say I've taken is I have probably tweaked the timelines in order to fit a story arc, but the actual events from history are
Mhm.
all there. So these are two key facets, I must say, of artistic liberty, if I may put it that
Right.
way, but in no
Mhm.
way compromising on who Bajirao was, what he was known for, and what he accomplished. So
Right.
those accomplishments are
Mhm.
highlighted to the best possible degree.
Right. And was there any inspiration behind writing this book? Like, what was the thought process while writing it? What inspired you to write this?
Well, I come from a CBSE educational background,
Mm-hmm.
and with respect to that, I did, of course, while I was in school, I did realize that, the school textbooks were Bibles per se. Like you believe them on face value. They are what you learn. They are what your marks are based on. But then
Right.
later, when I did my own historical research, I was surprised to see there was very limited material on other
Mm-hmm.
less sung heroes in Indian history.
Right.
Case in point being the Peshwas.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually remember a point back in, I'm not sure whether it was seventh grade or eighth grade, but
Mm-hmm.
there was just a small paragraph on, in such and such year, Chhatrapati Shahu reigned, and his prime
Right.
minister Peshwa Bajirao won many battles, and that was
Right.
essentially it. That was the extent of the description of this man in a
Mm-hmm.
textbook read by millions of Indian kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I found was there was a lot more information outside of these formal textbooks than there were there, and I thought this character exemplified our uh, lack of appreciation for
Right.
so many more heroes from Indian
Mm-hmm.
history. And so that's when I decided to probably, like I'm not a historian, I'm not an academician, so I thought I
Mm-hmm.
might just write a historical novel on this character.
Right, and you did a good job actually in writing that. There was so much mystery and suspense in the book. Like it's a 400-page book, but never in the middle of the book you never see that this keeps on getting increasing. But you never get bored because you want some more suspense in it. It's like that. The pace of the book is such that you feel like you want the suspense more. You want more mysteries into it. You want to know more about what lies behind each mystery. I think that is what was more, authentic about the Peshwa, the book which I had read. So yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. So I agree with your point that our education system. Like I'm from the state board. Come from the state board education system, and even in those areas, the history textbooks had very little about our heroes. Like for example, there was very much little information about Tanhaji or Peshwa, or there's so many heroes. Not only this, but there are other people as well who have somewhat. I remember there's not a single chapter on Adham Khan or Maham Anga, who was actually the nurse
Right.
to Emperor Akbar, who and people claim that she was one of the most shrewd and political ambitious women. So there's no mention about her, and also that many people
Correct.
have forgotten in the history, and people like you are doing like a good job of bringing them on the forefront. So I really appreciate your efforts.
I appreciate that, Prerna. And if I may add very quickly, a lot of people do tend to get offended, and rightfully so, when um, the the exact historical points are missed in a work of historical fiction. But having said that, there's so much of our history textbooks that is fiction. You have things such as the Aryan invasion theory, which are
Mm-hmm.
very divisive, controversial, and specifically directed theories to break up the Indian population, being
Mm-hmm.
taught in formal textbooks, being taught to children. So, so I'd like to see a lot more people question our uh, divisive and outright wrong history in
Right.
textbooks, as opposed to training their guns on
Mm-hmm.
uh, people who are, essentially um,
Right.
writing novels per se.
Right. And even like even the textbooks are wrong, people have now started to assume like all these films coming out with people have, especially the next generation or this current generation, are thinking like Emperor Akbar was Hrithik Roshan kind of thing. They don't see the actual meaning behind it. They don't want to understand the actual person who was there, who
Right.
exactly was Akbar, and what was his thought process, what was he thinking, what was how he ruled Delhi. People just have started. I'm not against these Bollywood films, but it just have glorified these characters in a very wrong way, probably. If I'm the liberty to say that they have glorified it in a wrong way for these characters.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. This is a long-standing debate, and
Right.
yeah, there's much to be said in this case.
Right. So apart from before writing Peshwa, were you dabbling with any other ideas like, or you directly thought of writing the Peshwa? Were there any other ideas that you were thinking about?
See, I was raised in a rather an orthodox
Mhm.
household and setting. So I started learning, actually formally learning the Vedas from a gentleman of a priestly background when I was 8 or 10. I don't remember, but I learned it for just under 10 years. And of course, being immersed in the Puranas, the Itihasas, which are the Mahabharata, the Ramayana. These are all things that left a deep impact on me as a child, both from the perspective of moral stories, heroes, heroines, their they're great, but they are flawed. The gods can be flawed, things of that nature, right? So before the Peshwa, I was tinkering with probably, uh, you know, uh, writing a few stories from the Puranas, maybe to get published. Not essentially
Mhm.
write my interpretation of them, but just write them in my own words. So
Mhm.
that's what I was looking at before this project.
So, what was that? What fascinated you about the Peshwa? Like, apart from bringing these forgotten heroes on the forefront, apart from that, what characters or what fascinated you about the Peshwa that you wanted to write about him?
See, what fascinated me was firstly, I'll start with the general and then I'll go into the specifics. But the general was the uh, there was a there's a widely spread misconception that the time between the Mughals and the British was filled with a vacuum. Like that part is essentially missing from
Mhm.
our formal textbooks once again. I can't say that enough. So what fascinated me about the Peshwa was after Chhatrapati Shivaji himself, Peshwa Baji Rao spread the borders of the Maratha Empire, significantly, and even beyond him, his descendants, like for example, Peshwa Balaji Baji Rao, uh, Peshwa Madhav Rao, all of uh, these less mentioned people actually went about filling in that aforementioned vacuum, and they
Mhm.
actually established a pretty sophisticated system of rule, a strong military, uh, a fairly good system of governance uh, in a period that is not very well known. So coming from there, this vacuum of history per se had to be narrowed down to a few pillars.
Mhm.
These pillars being some people, and I think one of the first of the men who laid the foundation to those pillars was this Peshwa, Bajirao the First. So I thought it might be a good start to start with him, perhaps extend a little bit to his descendants. For example,
Mhm.
we've seen the movie the movie Panipat, right?
Right.
Recently, that was a crippling blow to the Maratha Empire. But how the Maratha resurrection actually took place after that, Nana
Mhm.
Fadnavis, Peshwa Madhav Rao, um, um, and um, you know the Scindias, they played a key role in all these times.
Mhm.
So I drew from the general, went to the specifics, tried to narrow in on a few people, and tried to tell the story from there.
Right. Okay. So, like you mentioned about the Scindias also. So, how did Scindias come into the picture? Like, how did they helped out the Maratha, or the Marathas helped the Scindias? So, how what was the connection between Scindias and the Marathas?
Well, the connections, as far as I know, come from the times of Peshwa Bajirao himself, right? At that point,
Mhm.
I believe they were called Shindes. For example, the two most, you know, powerful and trustworthy generals of Peshwa
Mhm.
Bajirao himself were from the Holkar and the Shinde families, as you'll
Right.
read in my book. So they have an association from that point in time itself. Because when Peshwa Bajirao came out,
Uh-huh.
my reading of history at that point was he faced a lot of opposition from the establishment. How could such a young man, this twerp of a boy, how could he become Peshwa? How could he accomplish anything? So the the military machinery established at that point were offering very limited support to this young Peshwa who had just come to the forefront. So Bajirao essentially had to build his own
Mhm.
ilk of, young, ambitious followers who shared in his vision. So that was a point in time where, men such as Shinde and Holkar entered and became very trustworthy friends as well as generals of the Peshwa, and their descendants followed in that friendship.
Mhm.
And they later turned out as sovereign monarchs by their own right, but they drew their
Mhm.
roots back to Peshwa Bajirao the First.
Right. So even in the Holkars, like whatever I've read till now is like Holkars were never, that much in the forefront like the Marathas were. They were the silent players from the back. So how did like Holkars, like in the Holkar dynasty, we obviously know Ahilyabai Holkar. That's the only personality we know. But there are other Holkar dynasty people who have actually contributed a lot to the Indian history. Like there's a vast history of the Holkars as well. So what's your take on the Holkar dynasty?
Well, the Holkar dynasty, in my opinion, well, of course, you said that Ahilyabai Holkar, who was a daughter-in-law, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, of the Holkar, who was Bajirao's, in a sense, right-hand man,
Right.
uh, was very well known. My knowledge of their history is fairly limited to who was with the Peshwa
Mm-hmm.
himself, though. I must confess about things that I don't know enough about, and I must do a little more reading about the Holkars down the line from
Sure.
Ahilyabai. What I do believe is, there's this very interesting series from where you can draw a lot of inspiration for even the third battle of Panipat. It's called The Great Maratha,
Mm-hmm.
which shows a lot of light to Ahilyabai Holkar's life, for
Okay.
example,
Mm-hmm.
and her association with Mahatji Shinde or
Mm-hmm.
or Scindia. My extent of the knowledge to that family is the senior Holkar supported Peshwa Bajirao the first through to his grandson almost, I would believe.
Right.
And then the reigns of the Holkar dynasty sort of diverged a little bit under the
Mm-hmm.
matriarchy of Ahilyabai, and that's where I need to brush up a little bit. But I do have the material sitting around. I just haven't. Um, I must profess my ignorance with that question.
So is that a book in the making?
It's well, I won't say that it's a book I'm actively thinking about,
Mm-hmm.
largely because I am a very slow writer and I haven't been writing much recently. But uh, but I won't rule that out. If and when I get the time, I want to write about plenty. There are South Indian kings from the quartet of dynasties in South India that I would like to write about. But the Marathas definitely hold a very special place in my heart, and
Right.
I certainly won't rule out writing about the descendants of the Peshwas as well
Mm-hmm.
as their associates, like you mentioned,
Right.
if I get the time at some point in the future.
Right. Because all these stories are interrelated. Like if we want to write about one person, his connection might come to some other great personality. So it's all interrelated. The stories are
Definitely,
quite interrelated. So coming back to
definitely.
Peshwa, yeah. So coming back to Peshwa, like while you were writing it, were there any references, books which you were referring, for as a reference, as a research part of the thing? Were there any books or articles kind of a thing?
There were a couple of references, like in fact one and many encyclopedia articles online, like encyclopedia articles. Um, the book I would like to mention is I think it's called Bajirao the Warrior Peshwa by Jaywant E. Paul. And then later,
Mm-hmm.
I think after I published or released my first book, there was another book called The Era of Bajirao by Uday S. Kulkarni.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, these are two books that I think like if you want to learn the true history of
Mm-hmm.
the Peshwa, these are the books you must pick up. And I will say that unabashedly that their books are truly history focused and
Mm-hmm.
truly worth a read. I mean, you can put aside any temptation to buy my book in case like historical fiction is not so much for you as is actual history. These are
Mm-hmm.
two very good sources of the actual history uh, behind those lives and times.
Right.
But besides that, I must say that I also drew some inspiration from the Amar Chitrakatha title on Peshwa Bajirao. It's of course very thin, it's like a few pages, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it but it also did surprisingly do a lot of justice to the historical events around his time, like in a very summarized fashion, right? That
Right.
kids can understand. But yes, besides that, the primary source were many encyclopedia articles. So you get this roster of timelines, major events, like around which you have to weave a story and a story arc.
Right. So, would you say that now we have this audience for, or if the readers are ready to read about our history, whether it is fiction, non-fiction, it's another debate for sure. But do we as readers have the chance of, to exploring more into this section in this genre?
So if you are looking to explore into the genre of historical fiction, I think there are plenty of books. There might be many
Right.
books on the way. So there are plenty of books in that way. If you're talking about actual
Mm-hmm.
history itself, then I just chanced upon this wonderful series of books published by the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's about, I think it's 10 or so many volumes. I have a few of them here. But it's called the history and culture of the peoples of India, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't have it right here, but that's comprehensive
Mm-hmm.
history, and it's a very worthy substitute to our
Right.
textbooks. So while I talk about the historical fiction genre, I also want to focus on the actual history because that is the aim of my writing. People need to step
Mm-hmm.
up from historical fiction and say, "Hey, I'm curious about this. Let me go and read about the actual people themselves."
Right.
So I like to promote the actual books that teach this history
Mm-hmm.
more than my own books in a lot of ways.
Right. So, how is this like during this pandemic? I'm sure there must be a lockdown situation in US also. So, how is like what have been reading or writing in this pandemic? Can you shed some light on that?
Well, I'm afraid, and to be very honest, my writing has taken a very big backseat, and it's practically non-existent at the moment, largely because I'm also doing a new master's degree, and
Hmm.
so I have a lot of readings related to that subject, as opposed to following hobbies and things of that nature. And work has been pretty heavy as well. But having said that, I can say that a joint work between myself and another very well-known author will soon be out, hopefully before the end of this year. So I had worked on that a while ago, and it's probably going to see the light of day soon.
Hopefully, we'll see that soon. We can't wait for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, I would like to ask you about the podcasts. These days, the podcasts are, coming up in huge numbers. There are very few literary podcasts. Do you think that we should, do more literary podcasts and uh, give it a more bigger and better platform?
I haven't been following too many podcasts recently. Podcast period, not just literary podcasts. I did try to listen to a few audiobooks. So I guess my knowledge on this subject is limited. But let me tell you this: despite the charm of flipping through pages and reading books, uh, podcasts have their own appeal with respect to reading somebody's attention. For example, if they are commuting to work, if they are riding
Hmm.
a bike for exercise, something of that nature, right? There is this seamless assimilation of knowledge with people doing or listening to podcasts.
Right.
Uh, things that you cannot necessarily, like you cannot go running, for example, holding a book before you.
Right.
So yeah, definitely I see that as something that should be done more frequently, something that should be consumed more frequently. That's just
Mhm.
based on my limited experience of it.
Right, yeah. Podcasts actually help out, like, when you're traveling or anything,
Yeah.
especially in Mumbai, when you're traveling, there's so much of traffic and everything. It's just better to, plug in your earphones and listen to some books or, podcasts instead of carrying a physical book, which is, which is
Absolutely.
literally, yeah. So,
Let me ask a little about you. How are you holding up in this pandemic? Like, are you able to get a lot of reading done and all that?
fortunately, yeah, I'm doing a lot of reading apart from having a job also. So surprising and the most funny thing is that I started working in the pandemic. I got a new job from the 1st of April. So I've never been to the office, but yeah, I started to work in the pandemic. I've started to read a lot. Uh, and my reading has surprisingly shifted to non-fiction books. I'm reading a lot of non-fiction books. Like I read Archer Malhotra's Remnants of Separation. There was one Manu Pillai's book on Rebel of Sultans. So yeah, I've been reading a lot of non-fiction books and running this platform also, the Kitabe. I started this a month back. Uh,
Okay.
so actually, the Kitabe was a bookstore which I ran last year. I ran it for 2 months before I had to give up the space to some clothing brand. So I was a little skeptical of taking it online because I wanted to support local bookstores and I wanted to be on, promote physical books as well, not Kindle as much. But having said that, I'll plan to reopen the bookstore very soon. Hopefully next year once this lockdown is over. But till the time, I want to run this platform to bring in more more authors. Like that was my next question to you actually. That do Indian authors require a bigger and better platform? Because that is what my aim is. Like how do we recognize international authors very easily, but there are very few Indian authors that we recognize. There's Ashwin Sanghi, we know Manu Pillai now, we know William Dalrymple, who's almost like an Indian author now. So that brings me to another question to you. Like, do you think that Indian authors have not got their due, or they have got their due but still need a better platform?
Well, that's a very broad question, actually. And I think part of the answer lies in the fact that the market is flooded with books right now.
Right.
Uh, Publishing has become a lot more easy than
Mm-hmm.
it ever was in the past. Many can self-publish. Um, um, you know, uh, Publishers themselves, I guess, can take on more works on a more massive scale. So it's truly become, well, I guess in one sense, I would not like to think of this as a business, but it's become competitive in a way to capture uh, like the target readers' eyes in many ways. Just because your book is one of the thousands, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, uh, um, and probably like competing for shelf space. You cannot possibly hope to compete with like you said, the Ashwin
Right.
Sangees and so on. So yes, so I think a platform for like up and coming writers is
Mm-hmm.
would be great. But there are plenty of such similar platforms, I guess. There are a lot of freelance reviewers, so on and so forth, who try to provide a lot of budding writers with that platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not the most ideal thing for everyone because they are a dime a dozen as well, right? They are as many as the books, so not everybody follows everybody, like every one of these review platforms. So I don't know if I know the right answer to this, but I recognize that the problem exists, and there needs to be a better platform or way to recognize up and coming writers.
Right. I agree. And, even not only for the publishers, but also for the authors to create a niche for their, a place for their books is a challenging job. Because, if for example, if there's a book already on that genre, to enter into that genre is another challenge, is another task, an adventure sort of a kind for the author to make people believe in his book and buy the book. It's like another
Okay.
task for the author.
Okay.
Right. So, like, have you have you read any books like you mentioned that you have doing your masters? So, any source of materials that you would like to share with our readers, our viewers?
Well, that is one book I have right here,
Mhm.
and this is a very good book. So I'm doing my master's in data science now, trying to focus on predictive analytics, and if that interests your readers, I would highly recommend this book, Competing on Analytics: The New Science of Winning, by Thomas H. Davenport and Gian G. Harris. So
Mhm.
this is the book right here. This
Right.
is what I'm reading right now, as opposed to things that would give me good
Mhm.
inspiration for my own next book. But this is a fascinating subject and another alter ego, like another life for me.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm obviously a scientist and an engineer by qualification. So I'm trying to stay rooted in that front as well.
Right. Any closing comments? Would you like to have any closing comments on?
The first closing comment I'd like to make is, a sincere apology to you and your viewers for being tech retarded and not being able to join this on time. I was actually, like my wife who contacted you said, I was trying to join this through the desktop. We could not find the option to join it, and then like I had to shuffle around with my phone. So the first thing
Right.
is an apology to you and your audience. But besides that, I think writing about things that you love is pretty no, it's pretty wonderful because it's the closest thing you have to do. Uh, you have to creating a new universe, like a universe that you imagine, a universe
Right.
that you want to live in. So there's plenty of dreaming that goes into it. Like for example, when I write a scene or something, um, like I work out and then I'm playing music and I imagine that music to be the background music to my scene. So there's a lot going on in terms of stoking and exercising a person's imagination and actually like executing on that, right? Putting pen to paper, figuratively
Right.
speaking, of course, uh, and delivering those is a very worthwhile exercise. So whether or not you're writing a book to get it published, or just writing for an inner circle of friends, or just writing for yourself, I think writing is a very rewarding exercise. I would encourage as many readers to write as I would encourage them to read.
Well, thank you so much. And there's not only the technical glitch. I mean, I was also, this is my first live, so even I was trying to figure out how to go live and everything. So thank you so much for joining all the way from US. I really appreciate. I'm really honored to host you. It was a great speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining, and keep writing. We hope to see the next book hopefully in December, if I'm
Yeah,
correct. Yeah. So. Whenever you come to India, please be sure that hope to meet you in India soon. See you, and thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much.
definitely, Prerna. Thank you, and thanks to all the audience joining this from all these different time zones on a weekend. I'll let you go now, and you can have fun with your families and friends. Thanks again.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.